Hey everybody, welcome to Codepunk Podcast. This is episode 4. I'm Bill Ahern. I'm with Michael Zuhl here. And hey Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good, I'm glad to hear that. Let me get this set up here. Okay, so I'm just rambling because I was explaining to Mike off the show that I haven't really been drinking much lately because although I'm a big fan of beer, not just for the effects of it, but because I enjoy the flavor of beer, I'm drinking this one. Now, this, by the way, I was mentioning, Mike, the Evil Twin Brewing, one of my favorite brewers, they made one called I Love You With My Stout. I haven't even drank a whole glass yet, and I'm already feeling kind of comfortable. So this will definitely be the only beer I drink for the night, but it's pretty good. I wanted to mention that because I'm kind of like 10%. 10% ABV. Yeah.
So we're on what was this? The fourth episode?
This is the fourth.
So this is our fourth episode. We've done 3 so far. I think we recorded the first one independently by itself, and then what we're trying to do is record 2 episodes per recording when Bill and I, Skype each other and we get together. So once a month, we're going to try to put 2 episodes together. So episode 2 and 3 were recorded together, and we had made some improvements audio-wise, and we're going to continue to do that throughout the recording. So this time I'm actually wearing headphones. I think one of the issues we were having was that when I was quiet and Bill was speaking, I think his voice was being picked up by my microphone and being fed back to him. So if you've noticed in the previous 2 episodes, when I'm quiet and he's talking, there's a little bit, it's not so much an echo, but it's a little bit of added noise, and I'm thinking that might be my fault. So I'm wearing headphones this time. We're going to see how that increases the quality. Obviously, this episode and the next episode will be identical. So if there's still some quality issues, it'll appear in 2, and then we'll continue to improve from there. And the headphones I'm using are Skull Candy Hesh 2. They are Bluetooth, but I'm not using the Bluetooth capacity. I'm plugged in directly just in case Bluetooth gets a little wonky.
Oh, are they sort of like the dual function, like you can plug them in or turn on a Bluetooth?
Yep.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Yeah. I was actually looking at you because you had mentioned getting the headphones, and it's definitely on my list of things to pick up. I wanted to get just a pair of like Beats or something, like decent, not insanely expensive, but decent headphones. I've heard Beats are like okay.
They're usually pretty expensive though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're like $100. I mean, they can go really expensive, or you can get like just a basic pair for like $100 on eBay.
These Skull Candy ones I have are like $79. So they do pretty well. I mean, like I said, to myself, I sound muffled because they're cutting that much noise out.
Right.
So they definitely do a little bit of not necessarily noise canceling, but if you're working and you need a pair of headphones, and they're over the ear headphones, I don't mess with the earbuds anymore. I mean, I love having the over ear headphones. They're much more comfortable. I get better sound quality. So that's why I decided to go with these. And I went with the Bluetooth ones because in my office I might like to get up and walk around, work on the whiteboards, and we have a pretty big space, so I don't want to have it connected to a cord, and it takes me all the way to the front door before it starts to cut out. So they have pretty good range.
Yeah, that's not bad. Well, I bought this microphone on your recommendation, so those are not working pretty well for you. I might just go with those instead of Beats. Yeah, one of the other reasons, too, is because my laptop here has, it's physically emblazoned with the Beats logo, I guess, because it's some sort of partnership with HP, but, it's like, well, it'll match. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's not, better technologically suited. It's just a branding thing, but,
right.
I also don't mind saving money.
So I got an interesting story for you, and episode 2, we talked about technologically augmented human beings, and I was talking to a coworker of mine, her daughter, very long story, and I won't go through all of it. I don't know if she cares to even have me share it, but basically her daughter, during her pregnancy came down with an issue that is a result of when preeclampsia gets too advanced. And I forget the exact word for it. It's like DCI or DCX is like the abbreviation.
And preeclampsia is what?
So preeclampsia is when your body starts to retain fluid during pregnancy.
Okay.
And it's a warning sign because basically it occurs because of your placenta. You need to get the placenta out in order for preeclampsia to go away. So Heather had it, and it developed into the HELP syndrome, which is basically the same thing, only that's after you've been born, and your body still continues to retain fluid. Other things that happen are like your liver enzymes and different they constantly test your blood because there are different levels that they're looking for that if they get out of whack can cause organ failure. But when Heather came home from the hospital, they actually gave her shots, and these shots were to prevent blood clotting. And these shots were actually to prevent what my coworker's daughter ended up with, which is this condition where the blood both clots and thins at the same time. It's extremely dangerous. It's life-threatening. In fact, they only gave her like a small percentage of chance of survival, and they actually had to amputate her leg. And so she survived, thankfully. But that's not the interesting story. The interesting story is, I mean, she ended up becoming a runner, and with the blade, and
so cool.
She's in the Paralympics. And they just had the trials in North Carolina, I think it was, in which she went down and she did qualify, so she'll be going to Brazil for the Paralympics. And when I was talking to my coworker about this, she brought up a term that I'd never heard before, and it's called mechanical doping. And so, I mean, we know what regular doping is. I'm like, well, what's mechanical doping? Well, the class she's in for running is, I think she called it T43, which is one leg below the knee. So you have one blade below the knee. So you have one physical leg, and then you have one blade, and it's below the kneecap. And then T44 is double blades below the knee. And they had them racing in the same heats. And I think they might have even been competing against each other. And what my coworker explained to me is that when you have one blade, you can only go as fast as your physical leg can take you. But when you have two blades, you're not limited to that. But on top of that, the length of your blade matters. So a longer blade means longer strides, but also a more forceful push-off.
Right. So because of the mechanical advantage, right?
Right. So mechanical doping is basically people who are extending the length of the blades in order to be taller and run faster and get a greater push-off. And I guess there's not a whole lot of regulation behind it right now, but that's a term. And then she said that there's even a story about another runner, and I don't remember if she was from England or if she was from Europe or the U.S., but she's a T43, and she has actually been trying to find a doctor to amputate her other leg so that she can do mechanical doping and qualify for a higher position in the Paralympics. And potentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
We associate the term doping, obviously, to be illegal because you're using non-regulation advantages to perform better than other athletes, so it's usually banned, right? So it's, unlike, say, for example, Brock Lesnar getting dinged for a second time for using estrogen blockers. So it almost sounds like there's no regulation that kind of prohibits that sort of behavior in these sort of competitive arenas.
Right, and I didn't go into too much detail of, what the legal rules. Maybe there's a limit to a certain length or whatever, but she said clearly there are people who have added significant inches onto their height by the length of the blade. And, with our talking about technologically augmented humans and how it could offer an unfair advantage, I thought it was an interesting story. Here, we're not even talking about bionic arms or, mechanical brain implants or anything like that. We're talking about, amputees in today's day and age with a blade for a leg that they use for running because it's most efficient for that. And they've already found ways, athletes who are amputees have already found ways to try to take advantage of the situation. And they legitimately have a term for it, which was just for me to hear that, I was like, wow, I never heard that term. I never really even thought to do something like that.
Yeah, I've never heard that term either. What's really interesting is it invokes in people who are highly competitive a desire to go even further into amputeeism, which is, and I'm not going to get off on a whole tangent about it, but I remember in the mid to late 90s, when I feel like the 90s was a time where it was very sort of like weird and experimental, music and culture, right? Because it was just a different time, and it seems like there's a lot of weird, cool stuff happening, but there's a lot of alternative culture was very much front and center. And one of the things I remember reading about here in Philly, they had an article in the city paper, so it wasn't even like some underground magazine, about people who were so into amputeeism that it almost became a culture unto itself, where people were constructing these elaborate devices, guillotines of different various sorts, to amputate body parts. And I believe wasn't Crash there's a book about it or a movie about it, but anyway, it's just interesting to me that there is this sort of release from the physical space that people found in amputeeism. And it's funny, and I hadn't heard about it or thought about it in a long time, and I'm having the same reaction, which is why I bring it up, where the thought of severing body parts, my own personal body parts, is just I can't even get my head around it. Like, first of all, it's like a non-starter for me. But the idea that people would go and get these, like, you know, just for mechanical doping, just to kind of increase their augmentation level to a higher degree of performance, is simultaneously fascinating and, like, kind of, I guess my reaction is a little appalled. Like,
well, I mean, another coworker of mine who was he was in the military, and somebody who he had served with ended up in an explosion, IED or whatever, and lost both of their legs below the knee. And obviously, below the knee is much better than above the knee when it comes to recovery. And he said he was visiting him, you know, at the VA hospital, wherever he was at the time, and yeah, I mean, he feels bad. You know, he's trying to gauge how upset the guy was. Obviously, he's still recovering. He's still kind of doped up. And he said that there was another higher ranking officer who was there who had been injured maybe a year ago, whatever. And he lost both his legs above the knee. He said the guy just, comes in. He's like, what happened to you? Look at that. That's just a scratch. Like giving him a hard time, like not a hard time, but jokingly, like just laughing about it. And the guy's laughing back. And my coworker, he said, and I'm just sitting there like, if I had an injury like this, I would be distraught right now. And he says, I would be crying my eyes out, not knowing what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. He says, this guy's coming in talking about you just got a scratch, and he's laughing it off as he walks away.
Right. Well, he's already coped with it. Now let me ask you, if you had above or below obviously means you've got greater mobility because your knee is still there. But if let's just go with the just a scratch scenario. If you were in some sort of situation where you were now left with one or both, just go with one, how would you feel?
Oh, I would absolutely be, that would be upsetting. I think it would make all of us distraught, at least initially. Nobody wants to lose a limb. Which
I feel like, I don't know, at some point in my life where, you're kind of walking around, you've got like, you're in the wheelchair with like the one pant leg folded. Because I remember seeing that as a kid, like, I have no leg. So just like in the movie Kids, which is an old early 90s movie. Yeah. Yeah, the guy he had both legs. And that was an actual person in New York. He was an actual known guy. He was in a thing. Now, he was also homeless, so he had a whole bunch of other situations he was dealing with. But I feel like now with the technology that we have, things like blades or even just better prosthesis. I saw a website that was all these highly styled, like haute couture, like prosthetic legs. One was white plastic carved, looked like lace, and it was these beautiful women who were amputees who were like doing fashion modeling with these like highly customized prostheses. And I just kind of feel like if I lost my leg, I might be upset, but I'd be like, oh man, I can get like a cool leg now.
Well, there was a hilarious so somebody had posted a photo must have been on like a magazine site or whatever. It was reposted, you know how social media is, and it was a woman who was a model, I think, or a sports model or sports whatever. She was modeling, and she had one leg. And it was the part of the campaign was about, even despite, obstacles, you're still beautiful or whatever. It was some odd campaign. And then you look underneath of it, the very first comment is some guy, and it's just a carrot, like the carrot symbol, so it's pointing up, and all it says is would, WOULD.
Right.
Basically, like, I would. I'd do that. So, I mean, it was a despicable comment for the guy to make that, but it was just hilarious. It was like, well, at least we've progressed in society where men still don't care.
Yeah, right. That's kind of what I'm saying, too, is like, and who knows, because I can tell you right now that I certainly am not, as I mentioned, so extreme as to want to go out and amputate myself just to get a cool prosthesis, but I do feel like the technology has come to a point where if I did find myself in a very unfortunate situation, and I don't mean to trivialize it for people who are dealing with any kind of PTSD as a result of something like that, but I just imagine myself not being that upset because, it's one thing if, say, my hand is severed. I'm a programmer. I need my hands,
Absolutely.
My legs, I'm not completely sedentary, but, I mean, there's certainly good tech where I can walk around pretty much unimpeded. And so I wouldn't be so devastated by that. And you could, like I said, you can even go find really cool prostheses to walk around, almost show off your leg. It would seem like not cool, but if you were going to turn lemons into lemonade, that would be the best scenario.
As long as you're not mechanical doping.
As long as you're not mechanical doping. Well, I'm not. I mean, I have all my facilities, and I'm lazy and don't compete. I don't think losing any of them would inspire me to go run a marathon.
So we've probably rambled on for about 20 minutes there. Maybe we should get on topic.
Yeah.
So what were you talking about today? So, I mean, there are two things, diametrically opposed things, I guess, and one of them was something that I wanted to talk about, and we could run a comparison against how things are in reality. And that's this concept of the slow web versus the attention economy. And you know, I put a blog post up, maybe it was a couple of months ago, about me experimenting with the slow web. And the slow web movement, I'm going to read a quote from one of the websites. I think this is from Jack Cheng's website. And it says, so how long has it been since you looked at your phone? How long since you checked it for email? Do you feel it vibrate in the middle of the day when nothing is even there? Can you ever let it go when something is? This is the fast web, an attention machine designed to keep you looking, and it's very good at what it does. Every day, smart and talented people work to make things you love the most and to make sure you're always paying attention to them. So that's kind of the intro, I think it's to the slow web website. Jack Chang actually mentions something differently. I think he talks about the difference between real time versus timely. Right, so you can get things in real time, but is it really timely to get them at that point?
Which is a better way of putting it. When you mentioned the slow web, I'd never heard of it. So, you know, naturally I had to go do research on it. And you had talked about it a while ago. And I certainly have an opinion about both of these, the attention economy and the slow web, which may be a little different from yours. I believe it will be. But it's easy. You find the slow web. You do any sort of web search, you'll come up to that same page, theslowweb.com.
Right.
And I think it's interesting, but go ahead with what you're about to say.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just mentioning the difference between real time and timely. I was going to give an example in my own life, and this is basically from the post that I did. And I mean, you and I are both cord cutters. We've eliminated cable television because instead of and one of the things I noticed about cable TV is the simple fact that when you have something that's on and somebody else is scheduling it, you are now kind of revolving your life around when that episode is scheduled. And DVRs kind of helped with that, but binge watching and cord cutting helped to eliminate that. It's a jarring shift. I know it took my wife, when my wife was on bed rest from being pregnant, it took that for her to kind of get used to the whole streaming, because she was used to turning the television on and saying, what's on TV right now, rather than turning the television on and saying, what do I want to watch right now?
Right.
Big difference. And one of the things that I noticed after my children were born, I'm going about my daily life. I mean, at the time, I was trying to participate in everything technologically that I could. I mean, I'm on Twitter, I'm somewhat on Facebook. I was using Swarm, which used to be called Foursquare. My phone had notifications for sports scores, for soccer, football, not football, soccer, football, but soccer football, not American football.
Right.
Baseball, things like that. And, my phone buzzed quite frequently. And I would find that every time my phone buzzed, I didn't know the difference between a work email, a regular email, a Twitter notification. I'm pulling my phone out and I'm taking a look at it, and I'm doing it a lot. And there was a point where I put my kid in the car and I'm going into the store, and not just that buzzing, but also checking into Foursquare, which became Swarm. And I'm opening, first thing I was doing as I was going to all these different stores. Oh, I got to check in. And I was doing the check-ins not necessarily for the competition, because there's a gamification involved, but I wanted to participate in that whole location layer of the web, because I do believe that having all of that data is valuable when we search for things, whether it's through some sort of an AR lens or through Bing search or Google search. Like having that information out there, like this is where a particular location is. Those things were important, but I found it to be so jarring at some point that I'm like, here I am, my kid's 8 months old or whatever, 9 months old. We're in a cart, we're in a store, I got stuff to do, and my first instinct is to reach for my phone and check in. So the very first thing I did was I deleted Swarm. And then I noticed, I says, okay, well, I had a Microsoft Band on at the time, and all of the notifications, anytime my phone went off as a notification, the Band notification went off. So now I'm looking, instead of pulling my phone out looking at it, I'm looking at my wrist. So I turned that notifications off. then eventually I started going in and I shut down almost all of the notifications in my phone except for if somebody texts me or somebody calls me and Skype, because in either three it could be Heather trying to contact me. And that, that's kind of, I'm not slow web per se, with a lot of, because there's a lot of literature out there that, almost demonizes the use of technology and, you got to get away, you got to do this, you got to do that. And I'm not that type of person. I don't want to get away from technology, but I want to make sure that technology, like I use technology. I don't need to be a slave to it, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense.
It's like almost any addiction, because in reality there is internet addiction. I mean, I studied cyber psychology in college. It was one of the narrow specialty areas that I was doing, and it examined internet addiction and addiction to social media platforms and gaming and kind of the way you feel as you're doing all those things, and the sensation seeking that you get from fulfilling some of those items is almost identical to the same experiences you would have if you were an addict in other areas. Right,
because that gamification feeds into those small little victories, those instant gratifications that keep us just like kind of get that next little fix, even no matter how minuscule it is.
Right, and there are two things really, right? So the first is a gamification that makes you want to keep going even when you don't want to. So I don't know if you ever played the fish. There used to be a game on Facebook that was a fish tank, and you bought your fish or whatever with your coins, and you had to wait so long, but you had to feed your fish and you had to take care of your fish. And my wife started playing it, and then she invited me, so I started playing it to give her stuff back. And then you find yourself you're logging in because you got to take care of these fish. You got to clean the fish tank. You got to feed the fish. Then after so long, it's like, man, I don't actually want to do this anymore. But now you're invested in the game.
Right. So
now you're like, well, I don't want the fish to die, so I keep doing it, and you keep doing it. Then you go away on vacation, you come back and the fish are dead. You're like, thank God. So even when you wanted to quit, you kind of didn't, and there were two aspects that were kind of keeping you doing it. One, you invested time in this, you didn't want to just let your fish die, but also if other people were sending you objects, you kind of felt this obligation to send stuff back and forth, so you were playing for them. Like my dad used to play Words with Friends, and I was like, he used to constantly start games with me to the point where I got tired of playing the game, but I kept starting new ones with him because I thought, well, my dad must really want to play this, and I'm one of the few people he's playing with, so I'm going to keep going until we both realized that we no longer wanted to play it.
Right, he might have been thinking the same thing.
The gamification is one part of it in order to gather your attention, and that's part of kind of this attention-seeking behavior when it comes to constant notifications, because there's so much out there that they certainly want you to, hey, check your phone, see what's on Facebook, see what's on Twitter, because they're obviously there's advertising involved. So anytime you reach into your app and open up reach in your phone, open up one of those apps and look at something, there's potential for ad revenue.
Right.
So there's another part, and I'm going to save that for a little later. I'm going to let you chime in and give me your thoughts on it. And then I want to come back to some of there's a specific psychological and even evolutionary point to internet addiction that I want to touch on a little bit later.
Sure, yeah. So, the first thing, I'll just kind of go back to where you had kind of given the context for your experience with it. For me, I never liked the intrusiveness. I, of course, am obsessed with technology. When I say obsessed, I mean it in a playful, fun way. When I was a kid, I would build computers out of shoe boxes and refrigerator boxes. So my mom couldn't actually afford them. But, so I've always loved the idea of connecting to the world through technology, of course, being a big fan of cyberpunk. So, but one of the things I never really enjoyed, and it was very intrinsic to my interactions with, especially with smartphones, because that, of course, is where, we're connecting data to all these apps and web things. I always turn off notifications as just a matter of habit. I don't think there may have been a time, I couldn't remember, that maybe early on when we were using things like Foursquare, when apps were the new hotness in like 2008, 2009, when everyone's sort of like, we've got these little consumable applications that are like, they're targeted for a specific function. And I maybe learned quickly, kind of like you said, you're getting pinged all the time. What is it? Is it important or isn't it? And I just found that now, anytime I go into anything, all notifications are turned off. My feeling is, if I need to know something has updated, I'll go into the app. Twitter's a great example. I like Twitter. It's my favorite social network. But I'm only prepared to know what has been, like what's happening when I'm ready to go into the app. So I always turn notifications off. But that doesn't mean I have, on the flip side of that, now Pokemon Go is a huge thing. The company, Niantic, who developed that game, used to be a Google company. They developed a game called Ingress, and I played that game a lot. And that was, not only did it demand your time, it demanded complete, and of course Pokemon Go, it's the same game. You have to like walk around. You not only is your time being asked, but your like physical participation. And I think it's really interesting. It's a fun game. I mean, if anything else, you've got an application that gives you a reason to get up and stretch your legs and exercise.
Right.
But it's also so time-consuming that people aren't even paying attention to their environment. And that is sort of, again, where I kind of fall off from that. I actually, when I was going earlier to get beer, I figured, well, I'm going to walk and get beer. First thing I did, pulled out my phone. Again, not because it was an alert. They're gone. I don't use them. But because I thought, well, I'm walking. Let me play a little Pokemon Go because there must be something from here to the beer store to play, and there are actually a few places. For me, and I was sort of struck with, and of course, doing the research and thinking about this particular topic, I thought, I just don't kind of care enough. There's not enough reward for me to keep playing, so I uninstalled it. Plus, the game is kind of buggy. It's not a perfect game. So, and I had the same problems with Ingress, with the precursor, which was, kind of walk around and like, all right, so it's like the same behavior ad nauseum. And I almost feel like when the behavior is exposed to me, there's no mystery. I just lose all interest. Now, I think I might be an outlier in that a lot of people can get really hung up on these games. And as soon as I see like anything, and this is true for like MMOs,
right? With all the grinding you have to do at the end.
The grinding, right? Like all these free-to-play games, especially you've mentioned like some games that you and your dad would play. When Facebook was trying to, because Facebook's been trying a lot of stuff. When Facebook went through its like free-to-play little time economy games, like you'd get X amount of coins to spend per day, and then once you spend them, you could either spend money or wait. And I was like, well, that's kind of no fun for me. I guess I can just play until it runs out, and then I'll just revisit it tomorrow. Same thing would happen to me, though. I thought, well, now I'm just doing the same. I know what to expect. There's no mystery. It's not like a video game on the Xbox where like I'm playing The Witcher 3 and there's mystery and story to be discovered. It's just I'm repeating behavior, and I just lose it there.
And I'm not a big fan of the grinding aspects of a lot of games. I mean, I have a subscription to Star Trek Online because I'm a nerd. But when you get to the grinding part, like I like the camp, even though the campaign feel is a little cheesy and the graphics aren't the best and the controls aren't the best. When I play a game like Star Trek Online, the whole point is I'm inside of Star Trek now. So I'm on my ship. I have my crew. I'm beaming down to planets. The whole point of me playing the game is I get to play inside the Star Trek world. And they have the storylines. And then when you've done all the storylines, there's the different grinding aspects. And they've done a pretty good job of, having these little mini stories that pop up where you can either do, player versus player or player versus enemy. And, you all kind of band together to do something pretty cool. And that's fun. And then but the grinding aspect gets tiring after a while. I mean, you and I both played Defiance, and, we got through the, I know that I got through the storyline, not quickly, but I played it to the point to where, I got the storyline done. The boss at the end was, pretty freaking hard to beat.
Right.
But the grinding aspects of it, although fun, after a while, they just get so tiring for me. And that's just not my thing to do. Is I don't care about collecting all of this non-important stuff.
Right.
I could be reading a book right now, not trying to collect all these trash to do some crafting or anything.
And I think that's where you and I differ from the people who, where we like to digest the story. There are people who love the collection of the things, and maybe that kind of leads into what you're going to say about the psychology of like the accumulation.
It is very true because I don't even know if this is a valid psychological thing, but I remember, I want to say it was an episode of CSI actually, where Lawrence Fishburne's character talked about the difference between people who between wanting and experiencing or whatever. It was a difference between people who collect things and people who collect experiences. I like to collect experiences. I don't necessarily like to collect things, which is why, like as we discussed earlier, a lot of the stuff that I have is digital. There's an aesthetic to physical things, but I don't buy books and DVDs and CDs because I want the movies and I want the books and I just want all of the stuff to buy the stuff. I might get specific things for the aesthetic or for the collectability of something. But for the most part, my stuff is digital because it's more compact. I can store it in wherever I need to store it. Most times it's cheaper, and then I can go on vacation and I can go experience something, which is far more valuable to me, than anything else. The narrative, the story, even in life, is more important to me than, just collecting a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I feel the same way. Although so I was talking about how I don't. I also want to sort of point out that despite the fact that I'm heavily entrenched in technology and that I don't really feel so much of a need for my technology to call to me, some people like that. Like it almost, I don't know why, honestly. And I'm not even trying to pretend like I understand why different people like to have their technology needing them. But on the inverse of that is my in-laws have a house up in the mountains, and when you go up there, no one has signal. It's just way at the top of a mountain, and no matter, you can't hear me now up there. Okay, Verizon's not up there, AT&T's not up there, and certainly not Sprint, T-Mobile, nobody. And they also don't have internet, like they don't have a router or anything. So when you go up there, you're pretty much, just up in the mountains in a house, and that's fine. My wife thinks it's funny, like as though I'm having some sort of internet withdrawal, and I don't. Because I'm prepared. Like I know if I'm going to take my technology with me. I have my Surface. I have my phone. I'll download things that I might want to read or watch.
Right.
But because my experiences with my technologies already went on my terms, I'm kind of already prepared for that. But it's interesting to me that there are people up there. It came up once in a conversation. This is why I'm mentioning this. Was where there's almost this kind of Luddite mentality, going back to the slow web component, right, where people are like, don't become a slave to your machine. And I'm like, well, then, just don't become a slave to your machine. Like, right. I hear people complain all the time about Facebook. Facebook, God, I got to check into Facebook. I don't care about Facebook. I don't even use Facebook. And I kind of feel like, don't blame the technology for your own inability to control your habits. I don't care about Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. I go up to a mountain house. I have no technology. I have what I need. Like I have no internet, really, I should say. I have technology. It does what I need it to do because I don't think I've allowed myself to become a slave to it yet.
Right, and it's like I just finished reading Offscreen Magazine 15, which is it's an indie print magazine from Kai Brach, and in that he interviewed, and I'm going to murder this name. It's Johan Gunatelik. So we're just Rohan Gunatelik, so we'll just call him Rohan. But I'm following him on Twitter. We interact sometimes. So if he listens to this, I just murdered his name like crazy. But
sorry, Johan.
He's the guy, Rohan. Even Bill's murdering it. So Rohan created the Bootify app for at least iOS. I don't know if he did the Android. He does several other things. He has a mindfulness company, creating mindfulness in the digital age. And he mentioned something very important, because you and I have both talked about this in the past, and this idea of a digital detox, as if technology is evil and we need to get away from it. And he hates the word digital detox. He thinks it's a terrible phrase because he doesn't think it's accurate. And I know you and I don't think that either. Technology isn't going anywhere.
No, and it's a tool.
Technology is disappearing behind our lives eventually. When it first comes out and you first get a computer, or you first get a smart, car or smart, whatever.
Phone, even something supposed smartphone, whatever it is.
Right. It eventually it sticks out at first.
Very novel. It's a novelty.
It's novel and it's disruptive, and then eventually it kind of works its way into your lifestyle, and it disappears behind the scenes as a part of the everyday thing. Nobody looks at a television necessarily and says, I could have detox from a TV.
Right.
Although, it's good to turn your television off once in a while, but that's because you're becoming a slave to it. It's less about the thing in and of itself and more about the behavior that you're having around that thing. If you were an addictive person with an addictive personality, you can get addicted to anything. It's not technology that's the problem. My wife all the time, she'll mention something, she'll I hate technology. Do you really hate technology? Because, by the way, that's what's paying for this house right now. So.
And I think that's totally true. My wife is, among many other things, she's also a yoga teacher. And, early on, she was talking about mindfulness during eating. And it wasn't just necessarily put your phone away, because neither one of us are huge, like, oh, no phone while you're eating. I'm also not even a big proponent of no phone on the table.
Right.
So I just don't. It doesn't matter. It's there. It's inert. It only matters on what my behavior is, and that's the thing that can be ridiculed. But anything. You could talk about mindfulness with your technology. You could talk about mindfulness with your food. How many times are people walking down the street eating? They're so busy, involved with what they're doing, whether it's work or they're watching movies, and they're like not even paying attention to what they're eating. They're just stuffing their face, right?
Absolutely.
It's applicable anywhere, like mindful eating. She was like a big advocate of that for a while. Sit and just take a time to be aware of what you're eating and just participate in that moment.
That's very important. And Franz Varden, who was like a early 20th century occultist, talked about mindfulness in that sense, as far as when you're at work, think about work. When you're home, think about home. When you're eating, don't be thinking about something else. This is the food that you're consuming. Enjoy yourself. You can't think only in the moment. You can't, because there are, we're creatures that think throughout time. We think about the past. We think about the future.
And then the brain just doesn't function that way.
Right. But you can take the moment to kind of slow down. Like, do I really need to be on my phone right now? Do I really need to be on a computer? Do I need to be on a television? Do I need all these things? Can I just take a moment and breathe and sit here and realize where I'm at, what am I doing, eat my food, and just, because meditation has been proven scientifically to have benefits on the physical body. Mindfulness. Absolutely. And mindfulness is a part of that. So we do know that there's a benefit to being mindful as opposed to just having your mind racing, at 100 miles a minute. So, I absolutely kind of, I agree with her. And whether you practice, mindful eating or not, because not all of us can. You and I probably, spend a lot of time eating at our desks when we're at work. So you're thinking about what's on the computer while you're eating.
Yeah. Lunches is just basically like, I get an hour for lunch, but I rarely take an hour for lunch.
Right. And that's just unfortunately, the idea of a work-life balance is slowly disappearing. And it's, my boss doesn't care if I'm paying bills while I'm at work, and he doesn't care if I'm checking Facebook or if I'm buying something off of Amazon or if I'm reading an article, because he knows that, hey, there are times when I'm home and I'm sending work emails and I'm working on work things. And part of that is because I love what I do. So technology and programming is a part of who I am. There is no real separation between what I do for a living and what I do at home, because this is me.
Right.
But because of that blending, there's less time now to be mindful of everything around you, and you got to kind of take that into consideration.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's been a lot of, especially kind of associated with millennials, the behavior of, whereas people traditionally wanted to separate work. I go to work 9, 5, then I get my life, and that's where the whole premise of work-life balance comes from.
Right.
Is that, you get enough time to yourself, balanced with work, and there's supposed to be a separation of the two, but I'm totally with you on that. I don't find that sometimes at work I can't focus for any number of reasons, so I'll do whatever else I'm doing, but then I'll come home and I'll maybe finally find that peace and I'll get to work, and I think that it's really interesting when and I want to sort of relate that to meditation, where meditation, I had to explain meditation to people before. They think that you're supposed to force yourself in a particular state of mind. And I have to explain to them, meditation isn't about forcing anything. It's about just stillness. If you are able to just find a moment and allocate that and be in that moment, and your brain is going to wander, that's not a problem. It's just as long as you aren't behaving in a way that sort of betrays the stillness. And I sort of see the work-life balance thing for people who say, I can go to work and coming home really are the same thing, because if I suddenly find myself with a spurt of focus, or my subconscious has found a solution to the thing that I had trouble with at work today, I sit down on my computer and I do it, and it's about being in that moment. And it's very similar to meditation, where if you can find a moment of stillness, you take advantage of that moment, and that's sort of the balance to me. But, I kind of wanted to talk about, not talk about because we were discussed it, but like the idea of the attention economy, where we're paying attention to something and it has value. It's sort of the same thing, I guess, where...
Well, does it have value for us, or does it only have values for those seeking our attention?
Well,
outside of the gamification aspects of it, in which we feel better because somebody has liked 100 of our photo 100 times.
Right, and I guess it's a good question, because my immediate reaction to that is that if what I'm doing has value to somebody else, it probably has value to me too, and there's that exchange, right?
Right.
Do you think what are scenarios where that wouldn't be true?
Right. So let me bring this back around. I want to go back to that point I was going to bring up later, and this is that later moment, I think, because it ties in a little bit. And we'll use Facebook specifically. So when we talk about gamification, it's not just getting coins or getting things. And when it comes to Facebook, if you make a post and somebody likes it or somebody reacts to it, that's part of the gamification. You post a photo because you want people to see that photo, and you're expecting to see a reaction to it. So you'll get likes. So that's part of the gamification on your end. That's part of the satisfaction that you're getting. You're connecting with people, and you're receiving information back from those people. And I constantly complain because I'm like, I post a photo of something and 900 people, or not 900, but like everybody in my family members like it. Then I post an interesting science article and I get like one person, you and somebody else. So you and my wife likes it. Didn't read it though. She just liked it because I posted it. So so there's that aspect of it where you want to see, you gauge in the interest of your friends. And what's interesting is we feel the need to check Facebook, and we feel the need. I mean, there are people with hundreds of friends on there. And there are people who use it to, read these stories and to gossip. And I'll bring up a point from the guy who started trying to think of what the name. Anyway, his name's Peter Diamandis. He does a lot of you're going to have to cut some of this part out.
That's fine.
Let me start over.
All right.
Just remember to cut this part out.
Yeah, right.
So Peter Diamandis, who wrote a book called Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. And I mentioned this in my blog post, and basically he showed that there are some anthropologists out there who have studied, the human brain, studied relationships, and he's shown that the human brain is actually wired. It's specifically wired for roughly 150 interpersonal relationships. So as a human being, you can maintain about 150 personal relationships and actually be meaningful. And that seems like a lot. And the reason why it seems like a lot is because that's kind of from evolution. So when we were part of a tribe, it was, you had an extended family, you had part of the tribe, and, you needed to maintain all these relationships, including intertribal relationships. So you needed those people around you, and it was important to maintain those connections because it was important for your survival. Well, we don't have 150 meaningful connections today in society. We have a lot less. So what do you end up doing? So basically what the hypothesis is that a lot of times what you end up doing is filling those slots with the people you are most exposed to. And because it doesn't have to be a two-way relationship for you to consider it meaningful, we fill those slots with people like Kim Kardashians of the world, or the Taylor Swifts, celebrities, musicians, movie stars, because the internet and gossip and the movies in and of themselves offer us up a lot of information about those people that we feel like we know them, and so we slot them in kind of those empty areas. So it's kind of like when it comes to these 150 interpersonal relationships and Facebook, you have a lot of people on there. You have a lot of friends. You're trying to fill up these slots. You're paying attention to this gossip. You might even be on Facebook specifically to look up gossip, about other people. And gossip is an evolutionary trait too, because again, once you were in tribal times and once you were talking to, you're with your family, you're with your tribe, it was important for you to know what other people were doing, because if somebody was screwing around bad, it could affect the survival of your entire family. So back then you sought that gossip as an evolutionary response for survival. Today we still seek gossip, but it's not necessarily for our survival. It's just some leftover monkey stuff.
Right. They're kind of like almost like just lingering detritus, almost like nipples on men. Right?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, the whole idea of this being is that from a psychological and a biological standpoint, we have this need to seek out attention to a certain extent in order to build out some of these meaningful relationships, and we seek out people in order to fill those slots. So we participate consistently on things like Facebook or Twitter, and we follow people and we friend people, partially because it's built within us to kind of maintain these blocks of relationships. And then the gamification of it all with the likes and everything like that is just an added benefit of us seeing kind of that return on investment.
That's the stimulus, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I know a lot of people, and even me. Like, I know a lot of people who I dated a girl once who followed like famous people, and she would talk about their interactions on Twitter and wherever, Facebook, as if she was involved in that interaction. Right. Famous people doing things, and she'll say so and so is in a fight with somebody else, and I tweeted her and I said, you go girl or whatever, right? Like, and I was kind of like, yeah, but I mean, you're just sort of shouting into the vastness of nothing. Like that person didn't hear what you said. Like Taylor Swift doesn't give a crap what your support or whatever. Like, and I always thought that was funny, but it makes sense. Now I never knew that as you just explained it, but it does make a lot of sense because I know people who take those relationships kind of seriously, and not in a way that makes them like stalkery or like sort of deranged, but just sort of like it just matters to them. It's just interesting that these people exhibit these relationships, and not that I ever thought that there was something wrong with them because they did. It's just I again realized that these relationships had some sort of meaning that just didn't have it to me, and I accepted that. It was like, okay, well, that's just their thing.
Right. I think it plays right into the attention economy as far as there's a manipulation of that information. So, with Facebook, I mean, quickly got into news stories and trying to cultivate news feeds, Snapchat, with branding and things like that, because they're trying to capture your attention. And the most likely way for you to kind of, capture somebody's attention is to appeal to kind of those emotions and to appeal to those relationships. So if they're following some of these celebrities because of that reason, and it's slotted within them because it's an evolutionary trait, it's the easiest way to manipulate them in order to gain their attention. And once you have their attention, targeted advertising so you can bring in $1 or $2.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it always comes down to the dollar. I did what kind of mention, too, that I wanted to go and kind of look at some statistics on just automobile accidents. This is not really an aside so much as a sidebar, because, my assumption, my wife is a little bit of she'll accuse me of being addicted to my phone, and certainly I spend a lot of time on it, but I'm not on it when I drive, and she'll check it, and she'll say that she's very busy and she has to respond to this call. It goes right into the attention economy thing. In her mind, she must respond to it because her phone is saying, "Here's a ping, come check me out," and I don't respond to that stuff. Right. So she definitely. So it's funny. So her perception of me is I'm addicted to my phone. I think it's funny because and who knows, right? This is just my opinion against hers, but I'm telling you, she's on her phone more than me. And she definitely does things that I don't do, which is look at her phone while she's driving. And if I have to map something on my phone, I've gotten in the habit, this is also because of my motorcycle, of just getting used to listening to like the map directions. I don't look at it really. I mean, I sneak peeks, I'm not going to lie, but for the most part, I adjusted to the vocal component. But, it does make me think when I'm driving now, because I was more aware of this, that I always see people on their phone. Despite the fact that, years ago now, different states have tried to make it illegal to do one thing or another with your phone, but ultimately, pretty much across the country, it's illegal to be messing with your phone while you're driving. And people completely ignore that. And so I was kind of curious, have we seen an increase of accidents as a result of people on their phones as the technology proliferates. And actually, I went to a site called Statistic Brain, and they pulled their statistics from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and they did this research. They finished it October 30th, 2015, so it's very recent. And I just kind of wanted to add that so I wasn't just pulling statistics with nothing to back it up. And so I was surprised. Although they don't have dates for everything, car crashes have gone down fairly steadily since 1970. 1970 had like 52,000, over 52,000 annually. Now you have 30,000, still a lot, but it's going down. This is what I thought was interesting. The percent of traffic fatalities that involve the following, and it goes by percentages. Drunk driving, the highest with 32%.
Of course.
Speeding, 31%.
Yep.
And then it drops by half. Distraction, which I'm going to, it doesn't break down, it doesn't itemize what distractions are. 16%. So
pretty low.
It's much lower than I expected. In fact, if you were to ask me without having seen any statistics, I would have imagined that accidents would have slightly increased, and the result would have been because of distractions. Now, we only have this one study, so we don't know what distractions would have been 5 years ago or 2007 when the iPhone was introduced.
So maybe it is going up, but we just don't. We just don't know.
Going up,
but the number is lower than one would imagine.
Right, and I would just imagine it would be higher because, again, this whole attention economy. People feel compelled by their phones when it beckons them, and depending on whether or not they've got their notifications turned on for every little thing, it will be beckoning them all the time. But distractions, 16%. I was really surprised. It's very low. So for people who are concerned that perhaps we're becoming so fixated with our phones that it's becoming dangerous on the highway, actually the opposite is true.
And then all of our listeners can check back in 5 years from now when we read the statistics for how many people are distracted while driving with their HoloLens on.
Right.
Did you have anything else, Bill?
No, that's all I got to add.
All right. Well, you can find Bill on Twitter at Neurothustra. You can find me on Twitter at Zool. The theme for our podcast is Perturbator's Theme by Perturbator. You can find it on YouTube. And go read our website, codepunk.io. We blog on it quite frequently. It's been a little infrequent lately because I know we both have projects that are due. But until next time, we'll see you later.
Take care.